How did your week go? Was it better? Yeah.
So hungry. Redemption's very
I greatly appreciate your technology skills. Because I don't have access in the ATMs.
There's some more recordings.
It's nice to get there from
Yeah. The irony. Go, done. Greetings and welcome to our weekly Sunday Sit. This is a time for meditation and community to come together. Put on by the residents of the Monastic Academy, which is a residential training program of the Center for Mindful Learning. Free to move around, use the restroom, or sit on the floor during the talk, guided meditation, and Q&A with our head teacher, Soryu.
Last week we began our discussion of the word awakening, which is one of the most important, although different words are used to indicate it, in spiritual traditions. One of the 5 main words in the name of this community for the experience and development of awakening and responsibility. Talked a little bit about is not. That it was non-conceptual, non-self attachment. And it's much safer to talk about something that it as what it's not. Talk about it in the negative. Because the moment that we talk about it in the positive, this is the thing that it is, we're inviting ourselves, we're tempting ourselves to consider that it may be something conceptual. We just referred to it with, to consider it may be something pertaining to a self. 3 ways. This is me, this is mine, this is myself. And it's very tempting to get attached to it, to think, well, that's what I want. So a lot of the terms used to describe it, security, freedom, bliss, become attached to our idea of what that would be like and try to acquire it, become it, get it. That can be, always of course, but it can be a hindrance for the path. So a lot of the time this is talked about in the negative. In the world traditions in which it's discussed in the positive, a higher incidence of conflict. So if we say, oh, the purpose of this is to merge with or surrender to God, well then, it's very easy to get into a fight about that. And we see that happen. If you say, the purpose of this is to even you could say rationality, then once again, easy for fights to begin. So it can be safer to talk about awakening in terms of what it's. And so one way that we can talk about what it's is that it is is to say that it's not our story. Something that I've been recently is that a story about and the purpose of life is that story is wrong. So we believe certain things about ourselves, our past, our futures, our lives, and then life passes, and those stories are natural conclusion and often come to a very abrupt conclusion. That our story didn't work out again. Telling is the wrong story again. We have a story about ourselves. We believe we're a certain way, and then we realize I'm not that way. That may be good news. It may feel like bad news, but in any case, it's what we experience. We may have a story about someone else, way or that way, and then time passes, we get to know them, and we discover not like that. That may be good news. It may feel like bad news, but in any case, it happens, and we have to face that. We tell stories. Those stories have middles and ends. We do our best to keep those stories going. We typically have a real aversion to losing those stories, to realizing that those stories aren't. We're very attracted to stories. Many of you may have noticed who have trained with me closely, in this particular talk, I have not. I like telling stories. Stories are a very effective way to grab people's attention and convince them that what you're saying makes sense, because we believe deeply that stories are the way our lives are structured. We're weaning ourselves of that addiction to look at the world in terms of narrative. One of the real achievements, I'd say, of the mystical traditions of the world is that the fundamental vehicle things are given are not narrative. Because, as we know, most of the world traditions are conveyed in narrative. And it isn't that narrative is bad. On the contrary, it's good. And I've talked about this in previous topic. But we move towards awakening, we overcome the inability to see the world outside of. In other words, we become able to have experiences that are not immediately and explanations are given about how experience fits into the story we have about things. So things aren't immediately converted evidence for our fixed views. In fact, each experience we have out of our fixed views is seen as evidence that our fixed views didn't quite get it again. So each next experience unfixates us. And so we begin to search for something, get disproven every moment of the day, for something that doesn't have the tendency, that doesn't by its own nature fall apart. Well, it wouldn't be narrative, it wouldn't be story. So it doesn't have the qualities beginning, middle, and end. It isn't something that starts or finishes, born or dies. What's very, very confusing about this it, if we call it, is that it even fit into the categories of existing or not existing. In Buddhism, you know the Buddha, you believe in the Buddha. The Buddha, you no longer believe in the Buddha. Once you meet God, once you come to know God, you no longer believe in God. You can no longer find God, pinpoint God, even in terms of existence or non-existence. The Cross, one of my favorite mystical teachers, he wrote a beautiful diagram about the spiritual path. Spoke a lot about this path. He also used the metaphor of a path. And once you get on the spiritual path, you will definitely find God if you just don't the beasts lurking in the woods beside the path. And as long as you don't go off and pick the beautiful flowers, as long as you neither run from the beasts nor pick the flowers, you will automatically find God just the right time, soon enough. Beautiful diagram in which you can see in the way he drew it that it's a picture of a path that's going up what he called Mount Carmel. Top of Mount Carmel and you find God. Mount Carmel you will find God. And he's clear, that's the point of Mount Carmel. You're going to climb Mount Carmel. So this is how it works. And then he shows two different kinds of attachment, the path that you might stray to. So you might stray to worldly wealth, worldly fame, worldly pleasures. You might stray to spiritual bliss, spiritual wisdom, spiritual. Those are all things that may pull you off of the path. Stay on the path, then what you find, and he writes the word again and again on the path, nothing, nothing, nothing. Nada is the word that he wrote. So you're walking, and should you get bliss, what should you get? Nothing. Should you get wealth? No. What should you get? And again, till you finally get to the very top of the mountain. Top of the mountain, he writes, on the mountain. You finally come to find God, and what do you find? You find nothing. Very good way of describing that doesn't even fit into the categories of existence or non-existence. I say something that doesn't even fit in the categories of existence or non-existence, then I kind of wreck, because that's still inviting us to get attached to the idea that there is something that I get. We don't notice that the idea that there's something that I get at the end of this, a narrative, and that narrative ends. So we find something that doesn't exist or not exist or start or end, that you might not even say is something, you might call it nothing. Very appealing. It may not seem very motivating. The story of the story and the dissolution of the story, that is all tiring, exhausting. And in his, it's written, he wrote at the bottom of this, the very end, he said, the soul doesn't get pushed down. And so it remains in the center of its humility. The moment that it grasps on, the moment that it attempts to cling, it then gets pulled up or pushed down. At that moment, it becomes weary. And so we know for ourselves the exhaustion of creating, maintaining, defending, failing to continue. And it may be possible to imagine doing all that. And if we stop doing all that, then be very peaceful. It might be easy. Great sense of peace. Something else about it that is important that I want to emphasize, especially as we go into the next week when we talk about responsibility. In order for us to be responsible, in order for us to do a good job taking care of ourselves and others, as I've said before, there are basically two qualities that we need to master. We have to be sure that we are not delusional and that we are. And fundamentally, this practice is about learning how to not be delusional and how to be kind. To not be delusional, kind. It's important. It is supremely important. We have found something that really is trustworthy, that we've come into contact with something, because if we haven't, it's too scary. We doubt, which may be delusional, to deeply doubt our actions, which may not be kind. If we don't have something that we can stand on, something that we can fall down on, trustworthy, it's very difficult for us to deeply doubt. And here said that as far as she can tell, the reasons that a person can know that they're trustworthy, one of the indications that a person, when they reflect upon it, there's something inside of them that knows that they're not trustworthy. Something inside of us can acknowledge that in certain ways, at least, we are not trustworthy. We have to question ourselves. If everything all we're left, we need something to stand on. We need something to support us. We need something to nourish us. And so we'll grab onto something untrustworthy and spend our lives defending it. Make it seem trustworthy so that we have some place to stand, something to be nourished by. And so it's essential for us to find something that, and we look at ourselves and we see things that, and we look at others, things that aren't so trustworthy. Really believe in ourselves or in others. There are many people here who have experienced this. Trust someone. You count on them. One day circumstances change and it's clear that someone you can actually count on for whatever reason. That is very painful. Very, very painful. Because our story about them and often our story about ourselves then falls apart and we've been trusting that story. Person. Of course, sometimes the person who we see isn't trustworthy is ourselves, and that can be so utterly painful, can't even consider it. And so we set up a whole life based on defending our error as admirable or as unavoidable, as necessary. What allows us to cut through that is to have found something that is that, and that is, and it helps us in the ways that I discussed. It is something we can stand on because there's nothing. And having nothing to stand on is a place to stand, because there's no way it can be taken away from us. It supports us. Supports us. How does it support us? It supports us because we see that there's absolutely nothing us. Anywhere in the whole world supports us. Supports us. There's no person who supports us. There's no one inside of ourselves who supports us. To support us is falling apart. Nothing to support it. If that's the case, then there's no way that can be taken away from us. It's the experience of something, of everything being us. It feeds us with bliss, with happiness, with joy, with an endless happiness that doesn't end either in space or in time. How? How does it give us that much happiness? Simple. Us any happiness at all. Absolutely nothing is found at the top of that mountain. Absolutely nothing. Nothing can be clung to. And the simple experience of not clinging at all, already a happiness greater than any pleasure we could find, we could acquire, we could. And again, that can't be, because it is the experience of everything being To be nourished by that, to be safe, our death. Gives us a heartness, a transcendent vision that makes it so that it is safe for us to sing as the dissolution of our story, experience each moment as end of our world. And to glimpse that, to glimpse the supreme happiness, to glimpse the as they say, the supreme security from bondage. Directly experience the relinquishment of all acquisitions, formations, freedom, relinquishment. To experience that doesn't necessarily of our suffering forever, nor does it necessarily make it so that we will always act in ethical ways. However, it does make it for us ever again deny that such an experience exists. And that means that we of totally grabbing on security or happiness. I know a wonderful monk who, I haven't met him personally, but I know of him. And he says, you know, people nowadays say that everybody's too greedy. Everybody wants too much. But the fact is, it's not true. Modern people don't want enough. Satisfied with too little. Satisfied with things that will never give you happiness. Why? That, want more. Better. That wouldn't be getting something, it would be losing everything. And again, when you think about losing everything and there's a tension there, the thing that we see with awakening is that that very tension is the source of the suffering, not the falling apart of the story, not the losing of acquisitions. The conflict, grasping on, and fear of whatever it would be that would take this from me. That's the source of the suffering. Is that suffering imprison us? Obey, then we suffer. If, however, we stop clinging, there's no more punishment that can be dealt to us. So we find a deep happiness and security. We immediately find a new kind of confidence. In the long run, we become able to consistently question our convictions, relinquish our convictions, relinquish our actions if they should be relinquished. I become more caring. Awakening. Becoming free. Whatever for most human beings is primarily a story. It's the main thing that we told in thinking. The direct experience of freedom from that, to awaken to what is prior to that. Doesn't need the story. What's independent of the story, what's trustworthy than the story. What's happier than any story could ever be. Or the happiness prior to the story is happier than any happiness that could be included in the story. We acknowledge that to guide us. And as it guides us, as that direct experience, it's beyond conceptualization, beyond self, beyond attachment, beyond our thinking, beyond our acquisitions, beyond the formations and fabrications of our lives, we learn the deeply mysterious skill of living according to that, of the form of our lives, how we live, our schedule, our relationships, our choices, as we mysterious skill of informing with the formless, with becoming in accordance with that which does not. As we learn that deeply mysterious skill, does come when a conviction, a vision, a story that is to be told, lived. It doesn't happen because we grab onto some idea that we got in our high school, like so many of us do. We just happen to have some experience and met some person and it felt right, and so we do that for the rest of our lives. This isn't like that. It's not that we're more mature than we were in high school and middle school. It's actually that we go back further and further and further so that we can live in accordance with how we saw things when we were 2 or 1 or 0. There is then a clarity, live, trustworthy, beneficial. It isn't just us clinging to an idea of what our lives are supposed to be because we never question that idea. And that is the great gift that awakening. That gift is called, and we will talk about that in the future if we have the opportunity. But for now, before that, relinquish that. Let's intentionally relinquish it, because it's caused by human beings who hold on to their views, to their convictions, to their dreams. Is both extraordinary and horrific, and also mostly invisible. Our dreams, our convictions, as if they're good, as if that's what we should do, hold it up above, including friendship or ethics. For us to actually drop it, to drop our idea of what we should do with our life, this is something that requires enormous courage in itself. Before we jump in on that practice right now, I want to be very clear about one thing. The way that awakening informs our ethics in the way that I just described. It tells us how to live our lives, but we need to have something trustworthy to base this on. Otherwise, we're just taking away what we're certain of is pretty good relative to what we would do if we weren't holding on to that. Usually our ethics are, we make ourselves do things that we wouldn't do otherwise, and those are typically do otherwise, which is why we hold on to them. It's why fundamentalism is actually generally a good thing. Holding on to that is often better than what would happen if we didn't hold on to that. As we mature so that we don't need that anymore, that's even better. But until then. And so know that our ability to strive in terms of awakening on valid, real self-confidence, not just talk yourself into feeling better about yourself, but actually live in ways that allow you to be confident and not feel ashamed. Not feel ashamed of yourself. That happens through constant ethical sacrifice, constant sacrifice for the sake of morality, sacrifice for the sake of friendship, sacrifice for the sake of authenticity, constant sacrifice for the sake of integrity, constant sacrifice for the sake of love, constant sacrifice for the sake of compassion. Ability to make those choices gives us the understanding, yes, I am transcend selfishness. I am able to transcend myself because I did that thing and it was hard. And out of that shamelessness, not needing to be ashamed, comes, it makes it possible for us to truly strive of awakening. So know that of how we live, of our ethics on this path. Take courage, and we will explore this now. Take some time to recall that demonstrated sacrifice for the sake of some act of generosity that demonstrates the ability to set yourself aside. Benefit of someone else that's of benefit in the world. Call that to mind and allow yourself to Allow yourself to take this time. Your own ethical behavior. When you helped a friend. Helped anyone, because anyone you're helping is your friend. Recall that occasion, yourself to feel good about it. To feel the particular flavor of happiness that's associated with generous. And bring to mind when you were able to see through your delusions. You were able to see through a story that you've been telling that this may have been very difficult, may have taken a long time, but this experience. The experience of realizing that we were wrong. The way we were looking at things was not accurate. And even though going through that may have been difficult, there was a confidence, perhaps even a freedom or a happiness that came. That the way we were looking at things was wrong. Pay attention to that confidence. Awakening that comes from acknowledging we're seeing things incorrectly and powerful, that comes we're seeing things correctly. Kind of confidence that comes from acknowledging that things is wrong. Allow yourself to feel that confidence and perhaps yes, if that arises. Following a time when you admitted, acknowledged, accepted, the way of looking at things was incorrect. And now, in order to prepare ourselves for this next ourselves to begin with this next section, which may be challenging, in order to set the stage, bring to mind a time generous. When you are not ethical, not willing to sacrifice of yourself for others. Enough, wise enough, clear enough to live in a way that could give us true confidence. World transcending confidence. Now, and it's okay, we're going to work with this. Yourself to feel the shame comes from that. And time to recall when We're unwilling to let go of a certain view. Incorrect. Unwilling to stop telling a certain story about things, despite the fact that story willing to live by anything other than the story that we tell, the dreams we hold. It's okay if this is hard. Okay if this is difficult. As I said, we'll work with this. We'll find a way to work with this. But for now, at the very least, space in which to sympathize with ourselves and others when we're having difficulty being generous and letting go of our fixed views. Acknowledging, yes, in my past, there have been times that I did not do it. We see that, we acknowledge it, and in that way, we may feel bad, but on the other hand, we gain compassion. Take some time after I ring the bell to be pulled out of all of these memories, to be pulled out of all of this and let each thing you see and feel and hear as you walk up from these memories. Wake you up to what is present. That might be the feeling of the feet, it might be the seeing of a flower. But in any case, allow each moment out of the stories, telling about ourselves, about others. After the bell rings, take 5 minutes to walk And let that walk wake you up out of these views about ourselves. Something that we haven't told a story about yet. And if you start telling a story about the flower or the footstep, let the next flower wake you up from that. Let the next footstep wake you up from that. Now we'll do a bit of an exploration. We'll just explore a little bit. Opportunity to explore a little bit. And whatever happens is fine. To force things, push things, pull things. Whatever happens is fine. We'll just explore a little bit. Attention to your breath. Bring your attention to your breath. And pulls your attention off of your breath. And there are a few ways for what pulls our attention away from our breath. One is that we're telling about things. Story. We're saying something else is wrong. This happened, other things didn't happen. This will happen, other things. Story. Giving commentary about what's happening. Reacting to things through explanations that we're giving in our minds. Describing, imagining. These are different kinds of stories. So, if any of that's coming up, yourself, it's wrong anyway. Let's see what it's like without it. Or what things would be like stopped holding on to this story. And the other primary is the attempt to get or not lose something that we if that arises, we can remind thing was never mine. Be mine. So perhaps we're feeling comfortable and then lands on us and we don't want to lose the comfort in our, we want to avoid the pain in our arm that comes from the mosquito. We can remember, it was never mine. That comfort was never mine, and that pain, and in fact, that arm isn't mine. Aside and return to the experience of breathing. The sense of storytelling, which is in terms of delusion, a sense of selfishness, highly significant in terms of unkindness. These two tendencies are broken with this exercise. And the exercise is very simple. We our breath, and when commentary, thinking, explanation, fantasizing, remember it's not something that I can depend on. So we return to breathing. Want is being taken from us, something that we don't want is being given to us. When we're striving for something that we want, striving to avoid something we don't want, then we recall that that thing wasn't mine. And relinquishing that, we return to the experience of breathing. Continue to concentrate on your breath, setting aside stories, commentary, nations. Clinging to what we want, what we don't. Setting aside the most form of delusion, fixed views and narratives, most prominent forms of selfishness, to what want, feel, pushing away what I don't want to see here. See through each view and see through each sense is mine. Mine. This used to be mine. I will acquire it, will lose it. Dropping the story and dropping mine. What is the experience of breathing right now? This is a time for your comments, discussion. Please feel free to as you wish. Yeah, we had a lot of mosquitoes. We had a lot of mosquitoes. I don't see how we had that many. I bet, I don't know, 5 or 10 times, and that seems like a lot. Like all of you, but then how is it we have 100 mosquitoes in here? More, right? 300 or 400 mosquitoes. Yeah, that's a good practice, good opportunity, and to try not to be delusional about it. We know that. Tiny discomfort. Bad, but we know it's not. We know it's not dangerous. It's not really damaging our bodies. It's hard to believe that. So we're telling a very different story, feeling a very different story, right? And so you're probably going to try all kinds of stuff. Rationalize it. I really have to follow my my heart is telling me to kill the mosquito. All kinds of things. It was interesting, right? I was a mosquito, and right before I said it, I already had a number of bites, but right before I said it, right there, which some of you know I've mentioned, I'm a world expert bite you during meditation. I have trained for many years in a place without screens, but with just as many mosquitoes as we have here. But imagine all these screens and that door open and covered in mosquitoes. You're not allowed to move at all, not allowed to do anything about it. And I can tell you that the hardest place on the whole body, in my experience, to be bit is right there, because it's right next to your eye, which is already very, you then have to watch it take up more and more of your vision. Nothing you can do about it. So I mentioned this in a talk I gave a few days ago, this very point, and then it happened right as I was about to. And, so there it is, you know, face is not mine. And so that's good. And it gave me the chance to, very important that you should believe it. And there's only one way to know if you believe it. Do you live it? Many teachers don't see it this way. It's enough to teach good things, and if people like that, then you're a good teacher, but I think that teachers should be not being hypocritical. I actually told a teacher they're teaching because they're not living it. And they said, don't be mean. I said, I'm not being mean to you. I'm just telling you, you're not living it, then don't teach it. It's not a mean thing to say. On the contrary, to teach that, and that's mean to your students. So, so good news, I thought. I get to find out this right now, or I was just planning on saying it. I did it, and I said, okay, I can say it. And so these mosquito bites actually, and I know you take mosquitoes very seriously as well, a big part of your life as well. It's a wonderful test, wonderful chance for us to see really what happens. Because we imagine anything. We can come up with anything. Oh yes, if I were being attacked by wolves, I would maintain compassionate thinking towards all living things. And then a little mosquito comes and the reality. So it's really helpful to have that test to see what it's like to want something and realize that it's better. That wanting, so in a sense, this is my whatever, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this comfort. I'm going to not get that comfort, the whole sense of mine. And then it's possible to live by something bigger. So mosquitoes actually can be very helpful training tools, in my experience. You've talked about it as well. I've watched you on you, and you just watch it. And you're just, okay, how can I maintain mindfulness and compassion in this moment? I'm not sure. Figure it out. Doesn't that happen?
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a good way to do it. Good test, because bigger tests. Yeah.
I was experiencing a serendipity of that you suggested to bring to mind was had happened in 24 hours.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and
right.
then you didn't have to go very far.
Yeah.
And then I experienced my belief or attachment because of it. Enjoying the serendipity of that. Saying, okay, can I let that go? And I'm not sure that I can. Why? Because I enjoy it, because what it.
Yeah, right. That's really well put.
And I really
exactly
count on that. Perhaps somebody else has a life, a marriage, a career, or something. If you don't have any of that, maybe I just have this sense of magic in this.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So it's really hard to.
Yeah. And I wouldn't recommend forcing it. Wouldn't recommend forcing it at all. Another kind of a new story that I should get rid of this story. So it's not about forcing it. If you something fully, it ends. So to have a complete experience of that serendipity takes us beyond attachment to the serendipity. And that's not something to force at all. That's what I was talking about. I talked about a more extreme case of, say, fundamentalism. It's not appropriate. Aren't, as I've mentioned many times, fundamentalism and alcoholism are inversely related. States that have more fundamentalism have less alcoholism, and vice versa, and that's the case certainly in Vermont. Fundamentalism. Because fundamentalism works. It's highly effective in many ways. The only issue with it is that it tends to be self-limiting. So other than that, it's fantastic. Except that it's self-limiting. And therefore can become very dangerous. And anything we get attached to more tightly than friendship, more tightly than life, more tightly than compassion, will make us compromise friendship. So that's the danger, not the basic beginner level, you could say, consequences, which are really good. In the same way, you're talking about something very deep, for decades, investigated, come to trust, just try to get rid of it. It makes sense to consider the possibility that as that is, as correct as that is, there may be something even better, even more correct, which we can't currently imagine. Faith that a new world could exist, that we could awaken to, is the significance of this exercise, not the attempt to destroy the world we live in. Self dissolves. We don't have to get rid of it. The question is, when it dissolves, does that become a battle, or does that become an awakening to something beyond even that, even the deepest thing that we've realized, whatever that is? Not that this is the deepest thing we've realized, but just whatever it is, that our insights, that's what we, yeah.
When I mentioned just the word serendipity, it's actually talking about a larger thing that feels like God.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so if you say, this is what I'm experiencing, and even if there's difficulty, even if it's so intensely challenging, and then there's God, then I can.
Exactly.
And you're saying, exactly. No.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that shouldn't be taken the wrong way. It's why it's a little bit of a dangerous exercise to kind of jump into. But here we are, we're trying it, it's an experiment. The way I like to put it is, God, and you walk this path, you give up your belief in God. If you believe that there is no God, you'll have to give up the belief that there is no God. Whatever it is that we're carrying around, we will lose. Serendipity that I believe you're talking about, blunt about it, we have a good relationship, so let's just jump right into this, is actually a mixture. One is real wisdom. It isn't based on you holding on to a certain story. On the contrary, it's based on the God. And that's mixed with attachment to a story about it, a way of looking at it, the belief that there's certain meaning that comes out of that you understand and can therefore live by. All of that is mixed in, and that's attachment and delusion. The thing is, okay, get rid of it. This is bad and wrong. And you're, as they say, throwing out the baby with, and that's itself dangerous. And so we have to notice that if we do that, then that itself is still based on a story, that this story is wrong. It's an attachment to getting some bigger truth that's beyond this one. We've added in those issues in order to resolve them. So on the contrary, We attend to, yes, the serendipity, as you call it, the God, attend to it, and notice that our experience of that does not stay the same. That continues to deepen. Notice that whatever story we're telling about it evolve. Notice that that we need to protect it. We don't really believe that it's God. Notice that as we're grasping onto it, to formulate it, to turn it into a formula that we can understand, to that extent we're losing contact with the direct experience of it. And so on and on, we see a new way and a new way, even more clear. And each time it becomes more clear, the last understanding, the willingness to let the last understanding fall off is the point of the exercise, not the attempt to get rid of it.
Last understanding.
Yeah, whatever. So in other words, we're having different experiences. God, as you say, is revealing this divinity to us in another way right now than ever before. Do we fully receive that or not? If we don't, it's because we're attached to a previous of God. Before that we become attached to, that we now believe in. And it is right. So to the extent that we are protecting that, to the extent that we believe that we're able to maintain that, and simultaneously acknowledging that this isn't an experience of God that's independent effort of my understanding, but God is independent of all that, independent of all conditions. And so if we're needing to grab onto something, then we're acknowledging that deep down we don't believe in God. Because we wouldn't have to protect that, hold on to that. What's there when we let go? God is what we fall down onto or into, or however you want to put it. The metaphor that I like is used often is, because you're talking about something very important, is that as they talk about crystal ball spirituality versus crystal bowl, that's probably better because probably everyone here has associations with a crystal ball. So it's not crystal ball. Crystal bowl, you have a beautiful crystal bowl versus an old catskin bag that's worthless, awful, smelly, and used so much. That you want the crystal bowl practice, you need to let that drop and crash. You want the practice that you can drop and it won't crash. You want the practice you can step on and it won't break. Nobody wants to take from you because it's so ordinary that no one would want it. That's a real spiritual practice, as they say. And that's that we just discovered. That the very important point, though, that you're bringing up, which I'm taking so much time on it because that's so important, really emphasize, is that we don't try to get rid of our views, because that creates another problem. We let each experience free us from whatever fixed views we're holding on to that are causing us to be. We don't need to try to get rid of these things, because if we do, then we found something we can stand on, we found something we can depend on, and it helps us, and it's good. We should find a way to honor that. So put this that I'm actually most proud of is to say it takes a person of enormous strength to continue on without being untrue, they have realized. It's very difficult, and that might seem a very confusing sentence, but try to explain it. It's very difficult to keep going past our current understanding without being untrue to it. To honor what we've come to and also continue on. It's really easy to do either one. Very difficult to do both. It's very difficult to have come to that such a deep experience of God as you have come to. Honor that. How do you be true to that? And also on it to the next, more accurate, more complete, protected. It's not such a simple, it's so important to emphasize it because it reveals, your comment reveals that we're not well, easy. We're taking on something extraordinary in attempting to walk the path of awakening. Yeah.
I wanted to add the word relaxation.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I remember the monk was talking a lot about relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a problem, or I'm experiencing to do what you're talking about and relax.
Right.
And
perfect.
There's
well
a value in the relaxation.
Yeah, exactly.
In order to actually do it.
That's exactly right. That's really well put. What we're talking about when we're talking about letting go of our fixed views, about is relaxing onto those views. That's actually what we're referring to. We're not saying get rid of it, which would require a fight. We're saying to the extent that we're grasping onto certain ways of looking at things, we relax our grip. That's what we're talking about. So there's an immediate reward for doing it. And so the reason it's so useful that you put it that way is that it's common as we're doing this practice that we get tighter and tighter. Different practice. Because if we're doing the practice in a way that's effective, we'll become increasingly relaxed. Because we will, our experience of God, as you put it, of God, serendipity, whatever word we're going to use to talk about this, that experience to be what it is, rather than made to fit into a certain view. And because it's allowed to be what it is more and more, we can trust it more and more. Because when we are manipulating our experience to make it into the thing we believe it is, you know that you're doing it. You know you're doing it because you're doing it. You're doing it. So you know you're doing it, and you can feel the constant manipulation. You know that's present. And when you don't do that, then what arises, you can trust more. Because you know that someday you won't be able to manipulate it anymore. You're going to be too confused. You're going to be too distraught. You're not going to be able to manipulate anymore. And you want to know what kind of God is going to show up at that moment. Out is by releasing now and discovering what God arises when we're not constantly manipulating. So rather than the experience of so often as we do this exercise, we get tighter and tighter. And then we learn, what this exercise really is relaxed, more and more at peace. And that's why it's called security from bondage. Security from bondage. Word actually in Sanskrit, kshema, word in Sanskrit, or kama in Pali. Means safety.
Safety in safety in letting go of the thought, the premise that you were attached to, that you used to create safety.
Right. Well,
that was
that's perfectly said. Exactly. It's very impressive that you just said that. It's really well put. Yeah. We have it recorded if you want to listen to what you just said at some point. Or anyone else, of course. More minutes, so if there's anything left, we can talk about that. Yes?
I guess I'm still a little confused, but maybe talking it through helped. So you said if you have to release that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's stay with that. So if you release that, you don't believe in God.
Yeah, sure.
And then if you don't believe in God, then you release that, then you believe in God, or is your point? I was going in circles there for a moment.
Yeah,
but
you can go in circles.
But perhaps I conceptualize it more as being in the now.
Right.
Which is any thought that comes into your mind is the past and the future. So it's
that's a very good method. I don't want to get fixated on that either, but it's a good method. It's actually a very effective method, unless you get fixated on it, and then it becomes another fixation.
Okay.
But it's a good method. Yeah, so the point isn't that you should or shouldn't believe in God. The point is that you should be able to walk this path. And parts of the path, there's scenery called belief in God. And other parts of the path, there's scenery called no belief in God. And can you understand that all that scenery and you're free to walk on? Or does that scenery seem to be the path? What scenery are you seeing? Although that's good to know. It's actually very helpful, especially if you're, but more important thing is, are you free to take the next step? Question. More important than which step are you taking? So that's why I said, yeah, feel free to walk in a circle. You're free to walk in a circle. That's the point I'm making. Good. Well, let's stop there. This is a time to attempt to take the insights, the peace that we've experienced, and bring it into our lives so as to benefit all living things. And it's useful to give announcements about things we can do a week or so that would be of benefit. So does anyone have any?
I can explain it to you.
Yeah.
It's useful. So for those who aren't familiar, we have a document online. It's on the bottom of the email we send out every week. So you can click on that. And then the goal is that if you remember an event this week, like for example, interesting on Wednesday, you go to the document, find the details of it so that we don't have to write all this down and memorize it right now. So for anything you announce, please go to that document, go to the email we sent out, go to the bottom, and the link says responsibility events. Your event. So I have one in there at the moment, and this is, there's every third Wednesday of the month, the Coalition for a Livable City has a meeting. It's been involved with them at all, but it seems like a really amazing group. It's a coalition of a bunch of different organizations. A brief description of what they wrote, but it says instead of business as usual, we take the reality of climate change, species loss, and social and cultural crises seriously enough to demand real visionary solutions to perennial social, political, and practical problems. It's a group of organizations. So I wish I could go, but we're not free that day. So.
In the document.
It's in the document. Yeah, it's the Peace and Justice Center,
Yep.
Wednesday, 6:30.
Yep. Good. Yes.
I just want to remind everybody that there's a event at CML next Saturday. Zen Young will be there, so in case you're not aware of that, from 6 in Lowell.
In Lowell. Come on up. There are many fewer mosquitoes there. It's true. Many fewer.
On Thursday morning, the Workers' Center is organizing a speak out at the State House in Montpelier on universal health care issues. So I think the session starts at 9 a.m. and this opportunity to speak perhaps around 11 a.m. on Thursday.
Very good.
I have a few
Yeah.
SEER-related announcements.
Yeah.
First of all, we have a new resident, and if you want to stand up and give us your name and where you're from and something interesting about it.
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's good to see all of you. I hope to be able to talk. My name is Christopher from Chicago. Interested in the neuroscience of meditation and the ability of meditation, gratitude, and mindful living, personal and societal impact. 7-day meditation retreat at CML, and did it while I was fasting, which was an interesting, intense experience. It's great to be here.
And thanks for being with us. So, very good for the community to have you with us.
So as Andre mentioned, we have that Shinzen day-long retreat from 12 to 6 next Saturday. And we also have a Shinzen-led week-long retreat in September, which is going to be great. That is from September 22nd to the 29th. We have a summer celebration coming up on August 13th.
Yes, everyone please come to that. Find a way.
And we will also have a Sunday sit that day. Let you know when we've worked out that magic.
In Lowell?
Here.
Okay.
Although, just so you know,
Okay.
I guess this wasn't conveyed to you.
Maybe it wasn't.
We're trying to not tell anyone that there is a Sunday sit that day. So you can let go of that, I suppose, and instead come to Lowell and have the Sunday sit with us there. Now we're going to have it here because we want to always have it here because there are a lot of people who count on this to be here and be able to make it there. So we're going to have it here, but we hope no one will come to the one here because everyone will have gone to the one there. Then there'll just be one resident sitting here alone, and that's just fine, and they're used to it.
We are.
Is August 13th, you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
From August 29th to September 2nd, we have our Vision Quest, which unfortunately all the spots are filled, but we are looking for supporters who can help us out, setting up camp in the woods, building a sweat lodge, hanging out with us while we go through that process, cooking. And in other related to just supporting our organization stuff, we are probably going to need a new van soon to get here to the Sunday sit and to get around to where we need to go. That you are finished with and you could donate to us or know someone that does, that would be incredible. Or a vehicle that you're done with that we could trade in, so that could help us get a new van. Would be amazing.
Just buy us away.
Yeah. And that's it for me. Thanks everyone for coming.
I think I missed the new resident's name.
Christopher, sorry. Should have enunciated that better.
To get involved with those things, what's the best way to reach out to us?
You can reply directly to the emails that we send for the Sunday Sit. They go directly to info@centerformindfullearning.org or my email. So, and if you're not on that list, we have a list you could sign up for on a piece of paper out there and start getting those emails.
Nice to see all of you. Chanting will begin in about 10 minutes. It's very good that we have this community here to talk about these things and share our insights and our aspirations.